Welcome back to A Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. Former Clinton Cabinet Secretary Robert Reich recently posted an essay saying that he thinks that the tide is finally turning against Trump at long last, where he compared the American people to a sleeping giant who, at the times of the greatest crisis, awakened, how it awoke in the days of McCarthyism and ended the Red Scare and McCarthy's career. It awoke again in the age of civil rights, where activists were being violently attacked by white supremacists and led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act. It awoke again in the age of Vietnam, ending the presidency of Richard Nixon and what he called one of the nation's costliest, deadliest, and stupidest wars. So once again, that sleeping giant may be stirring, and like it did in the past, may finally come and bring justice. Robert Reich has been someone that I have followed for many years and whose opinion I've respected and whose approach to current political events has been one that I have followed with a great deal of admiration and respect. And in many ways, I wish I could one day have his sort of eloquence and not only grasp on the political world around us, but an ability to communicate about it in a very relatable way that makes you feel that you're not being talked to by an intellectual, you're not being lectured to or being told in an overly academic way. It's very approachable. He's very approachable just as a person, and the way he communicates is very approachable, so that you can really internalize the information he's putting out in a way that others may not possess. But more importantly, his decades in politics, he says, has given him a sort of sixth sense about things. And so if he thinks that there's something beginning and that a change is on the horizon, I am willing to trust that instinct because it's been one that's been honed over a very long time within the inner workings of the government. So he knows what he's talking about. And he may very well be right. And the cracks really are starting to show on the Trump regime, and the sleeping giant may be rousing. The president has now claimed that broadcast networks that air negative coverage of him are actually a arm of the Democratic Party, and that negative coverage about him is, quote, really illegal, and that they'll take a good story about him and they'll change it into a bad story, and that is really illegal. I mean, when you're accusing broadcasters that aren't in favor of you of being an arm of your political enemies and that negative things about you on TV are illegal, that sounds like dictator stuff. Not only dictator stuff, but highly delusional dictator stuff, and that's not what the American president is supposed to be. And if this is what we get, maybe it's time to get rid of him. And it's pretty clear that the people are starting to feel that something isn't right. Following Jimmy Kimmel's removal from the air last week, it resulted in a mass boycott of Disney, who is the parent company of ABC, the network that Jimmy Kimmel's show was on. They canceled their Disney Plus, they canceled their Hulus, even a threat of a more expansive consumer boycott. And this was no little thing. This was the largest boycott in the last 5 years, 4 times larger than the most recent boycott. This boycott dipped Disney's stock 3.5%, and it still traded lower in the days following Jimmy Kimmel's return to the air, and it cost them $4 billion. People were using one of their most powerful weapons, their dollar. Their consumerism is one of their greatest strengths and weaknesses, but when used for good, it can be a powerful weapon. And great leader Trump's poll numbers were already lagging before all this, and after this, they were just tanking, which is something that I'm sure he could not stand. But while I don't have the decades of perspective Mr. Reich has, I do have to say I do agree with his assessment that this is likely the beginning of something much greater, much more far-reaching, and that so-called sleeping giant really has begun to awaken and is going to get us back onto our correct path. And yes, maybe it does feel a little overly optimistic to feel like we are going to finally start to get out of this collective nightmare we've been living in for the last 9 months, which really have felt like 9 years the way things have been going. But I think that if someone who has had his finger on the pulse of politics in the world around us for as long as he has. If Robert Reich sees a change coming, I'm inclined to take him on that and believe that the change he is seeing is truly on the way. I also can't help but feel as if that is in some part out of a sense of self-preservation. I don't just want, as the Sam Cooke song famously said, that a change gonna come. I need to believe that. I need to believe that what we're experiencing right now is not forever. It's not the new normal. We are going to get out of this. We're going to persevere as we always have through adversity, through national pain and tragedy. We are going to come out of this, hopefully soon. And like those other times that the sleeping giant woke up, come out of it better, more centered, more evolved, if you want to say. It feels more and more like the current times we live in are an almost checklist for fascism, and I don't want to believe that fascism has taken hold in America, because that feels hyperbolic. But I also feel that I can't ignore the truth of my eyes, what I see, and what I see is very scary, and I don't like waking up and wondering, what is the next fascist type thing our president's going to do or say, and his followers are going to just cheer for. What rights are we going to lose now? What part of the Constitution is going to be further eroded? How bad are things about to get? I think we're all due a little optimism, a little hope that things are about to change for the better. So if someone who I feel really knows what he's talking about assures us that he thinks that he sees the change coming, I am on board. Our current political situation has been deeply divided into an us versus them, left versus right thing, where there can only be one victor and everyone else are losers. What we're experiencing is bad for everyone, regardless of political inclinations. We do not want a totalitarian leader who is willing to shut down any and all criticism, or even just jokes that are perceived as criticism, and saying that all of his enemies are enemies of the people and that no one should be legally allowed to say bad things about him. That's not a president, that's a king, and that is literally what we started our nation to get away from. Despite what many on the right seem to believe, we all collectively deserve better than a supreme leader who is unquestionable and to whom opposition is not even allowed to be spoken of. I mean, it would almost be comical if it wasn't so incredibly sad that the party that is saying you can't say mean things about the president, it was the same one that spent the last 4 years making jokes about old Uncle Joe and how he was senile and he liked to smell the hair of children, and who spent nearly a decade saying some of the most vile, reprehensible, and racist things about our first president of color. I think what we're finding, but it comes as no surprise, when they say that they were pro-free speech, what they meant was, we want to be free to say whatever we want, but we don't want people to be free to say things that we don't like. And unfortunately for them, that's just not the way it works. We live in a society that allows dissent, that allows criticism of elected leaders. They are not perfect, they are not without fault, and those faults are allowed to be pointed out in a public setting to whoever wants to listen, because that is the society of free expression that we should want to foster and live in. I mean, I know for one, I was getting just so tired of the old President Joe Biden, he's so old and he doesn't even know where he is and he falls down and he is old and creepy. I didn't like it, but I wasn't saying, hey, those people should be censured. They shouldn't be allowed to say that. No, they are allowed to say it, even if I think it's stupid and that they really are hypocrites, considering that their President Trump is just as old and confused and maybe in a lot of ways even worse mentally. But I guess bottom line, the question is, are things really heading towards healing, towards a reparation of some of the damage that we are seeing done? And I think the answer is yes, that we are on the path towards a return to what's right. And while I feel like the giant has been hitting the snooze button one too many times, if he's truly waking up, if things are truly about to start getting better again, I am willing to have waited for it. And when you get down to it, I think sleeping through our alarm is something we can all relate to. So if that's what we're seeing and the giant kind of slept through his alarm, we can give it a little pass. Just be happy he's waking up at long last. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time, when I cut you off, another slice of news.